was trying to pick out the book to make it more compassionate. And did anybody read the book? I haven't read it yet. The Hummingbird's Daughter. Oh, anyhow, look, the author is Luis Albert Urrea. Do you know who he is? Great author, but his books are really telling. Like in this background, so he's half Basque, half Mexican, but the heroine in one of his stories is a Republican woman. And he said, I wrote that because he's a very firm Democrat, except his mother was a very firm Republican. And you can be a Republican and be a great hero. Then he does this piece where he wants to research the border guards, and he researched it thinking, these are evil people. And he comes away with a report saying these people are very good. You know, they are knights in shining armor. Yes, they throw people in jail, but they save a lot of people's lives, and they're incredibly compassionate. And compassion is a little bit more complex than, border guard bad, Republican bad. But in the movie, all the bad people were white and religious. Nothing is that simple. Or in the Bible, the book of Ruth, the book of Esther, the Gospel of Luke, it's all about protecting the minority, about welcoming the outsider, but they do it without a job of condemning other people. The Shape of Water, really, I find it mocks Christian and is actually anti-hospitality. So that irritated me. The fourth point is, and I know this sounds strange, about the sexual exploitation. So there's this sea creature that's, if you don't know the movie, there's a sea creature that's trapped in this laboratory, and they're going to do experiments on it and then kill it, and then the evil white man decides to kill this creature. And so this woman, she's going to save, and like, it has a lot of, like, I was kind of surprised, it has a lot of sex in the movie. And she's kind of a misfit, but she saves the creature and she keeps it in her bathtub. And she has sex with it in the bathtub. Now, but here's the thing about it. Then she sets it free. So Rusty, our youth minister, he saw the movie and he said, what would your reaction be if that was a man who found a mermaid and kept it in its tub so it can have sex with it? Wouldn't you think that's disgusting? The whole Me Too movement, which I support the Me Too movement, if they would have exploded, wow, you're keeping this woman trapped in your bathroom for well, Rusty's comment was, well, yeah, this is the sea creature's male, but isn't that just disgusting as well? Like, it kind of is. So, to me, I'm a supporter of the Me Too movement, but suddenly Hollywood doesn't have a problem with that side. And if you're going to be for the Me Too movement, you're against all sexual exploitation. The other thing is The Shape of Water. Why did they call the movie The Shape of Water? Because it's about this sea creature that this woman saves, and then they live happily ever after. But, there's an evil white man in it who's trying to kill the monster. This black woman, this single woman, and this gay guy and a communist all save the creature. So why is it called The Shape of Water? So a lot of people, I think, miss this, and The Shape of Water is beautiful. The Shape of Water, you have to know a little Taoism. Taoism is this ancient religion from China. There's Confucius, and Confucius believed in rules and regulations. Lao Tzu, the author of Taoism, he goes into the desert and prays. He said, underneath all reality is this thing called the Tao, and it guides all life. We call it the Holy Spirit. All life comes from it. It can control you. So Taoism is about praying. And the Tao is pictured as water, and the Tao is love. And so in the poetries, the Tao is like water, that the hardest ground that you can't even pierce with a shovel, put water on it, and the Tao love will soften it, and life can grow. Or what is the shape of love? It's the shape of water. It conforms to whatever person it needs. There's a great poem in there. Or here's another one. This is from, he wrote poetry. So this is Tao 76. The living are soft and supple. The dead are rigid and stiff. In life, plants are flexible and tender. In death, they are brittle and dry. Stiffness is thus the companion of death. Flexibility, the companion of life. An army that cannot yield will be defeated. A tree that cannot bend will crack in the wind. The hard and the stiff will be broken. The soft and the supple will prevail. And it just means like the Tao is like water. It bends, it curves, so does love. Does that make sense? I still don't know what it has to do with the movie. And then I know that title The Shape of Water refers to the Tao and love, but I really didn't find, I didn't like the movie. So I was starting with the movie I disliked the most. And I am not right on anything, I just think I am. Did anybody like the movie? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, tell me why.
The only reason we liked it is because we had to keep watching it to see what was going to happen. Whether we were going to say they see the picture or that's, we just took it for.
You like the suspense?
Yeah. The only difference, I don't know, is that her boiled eggs symbolize anything? That she did the eggs every day and she would bring him an egg and I couldn't.
She gave him a hard-boiled egg every day. I don't know, but in the Christian tradition, egg means life. So I interpreted that she was feeding him life. She was trapped in this cage. Anybody else like the movie or have an opinion? You don't? Yeah, go ahead.
But I was just telling them, I think I'm really shallow because I didn't get any of those things. And I just watched it and like, oh, poor preacher.
And that's good, you know.
It was different, you have to say, because we see almost all the movies that are up for Academy Awards, and it was different. So it kind of what she was saying was different, and I wanted to see, had to see what.
It was different and suspenseful, and you hope to see Preacher gets freedom. But my point is this, and I said, movies are modern pulpits. And like I know I kind of overanalyze things, but literally when every bad character is one that quotes the Bible, and every good character is against religion, you kind of pick it up. Does that make sense?
Do you know the movie Snow Falling on Cedar?
I saw the movie Snow Falling on
The
Cedar.
good guys were the Christians who didn't believe in abortion, and the bad guys were those that were passionate aborters.
Yeah, those are not mistakes.
No, that's not.
So.
That was a plan. And our book club did a study of the impact of culture on culture of movies, and we started with.
I have to give you the talking stick.
Our book club did a study on the impact on culture by movies, and we went way back to 1942 with We'll Always Have, or Casablanca. Now that was a wonderful movie. That tuned America for the war. In fact, it was released the day before Pearl Harbor. So anyway, and it talks about the people that were in the movie were all refugees from Nazi areas. So, and they played the German parts. In fact, most of the actors never went on to get another job because of their German accents. So there's good that can come out of it. Bogart was the hero of America. He didn't want to get in war. He wanted to mind his own business, but he ended up being a patriot. And so, movies can do good, bad, and ugly. I don't know if you know.
Totally agree that movies, movies, literature,
The Graduate?
but I think movies do shape our opinions, even in those little subtle ways. And you might not have noticed the anti-religious theme, but I just think in subtle ways it's non-verbally teaching the next generation that's what Christians are like. They're anti-sea creatures. Okay, next movie, can we go into... How many people saw the movie Lady Bird? How many people liked the movie Lady Bird? To be honest, I figured most women would like the movie Lady Bird. But I'm curious because I think this is a movie that you have to be a mother and a woman to really appreciate. I thought it was an okay movie. I think it's kind of funny. The point, I guess, is religion is to be nice to your parents. And she does go to a Catholic school, and luckily the nuns are pictured as very nice with a sense of humor, which I suppose shows how low the bar is. But no, the nice nuns were funny and nice and educated and smart. The only problem is you don't see that the nuns pass on the faith, but I guess you can't. The movie is not about being Catholic, so that I can easily let go. The movie really is about the mother-daughter conflict. And like I had a set of friends, women, who went to the movie and loved it. And I had three, her and her two sisters, they hated it. But it's about the mother-daughter conflict. Here's the odd part. So just a little background with me. The fighting is not the problem, but the inability to persuade the other is the problem in the movie. And you only notice this happens. Raising boys is completely different than raising girls. Because I was never really a mama's boy. I didn't, regrettably, much of my life, I wasn't really concerned with my mother. I loved her, but my mother was just so sweet, even in my teenage years, so sweet. And like my two sisters, I just remember my mother and them downstairs just screaming at each other. And for the life of me, I was always like, what do they argue about? I didn't even get it. But I just remember they both screaming at each other. And my mother is so sweet. And now, my sister, who's always been very jealous of my mother, jealously guarding my mother, they live right next door to each other. They're best friends. But I'm always like, what were you people arguing about? I could never figure it out. And so a mother-son relationship is so much different than a mother-daughter one. And there was such anger. And it was really because my sister just refused to be persuaded by my mother. And my mother and her would get completely angry. And now, my sister admits my mother was right. But here's what I did like about the movie. I like that it showed that there is a difference between fighting and contempt. There's this guy, I like this. He's married to a Spanish woman. They've been married for 30 years. And he said, we completely love each other, but we fight every day. And he said, fighting is not the problem. It's polarization that's the problem. The problem is not that you disagree, but to disagree well with the other. And there's a huge amount of literature that proves that anger is not correlated to divorce. Isn't that interesting? Anger is not correlated to divorce. Divorce is correlated to contempt. Contempt and anger are much different things. Contempt is cold. It's the conviction of the utter worthlessness of the other person. Anger, when they tracked this study in its course, statistically is more likely to lead to reconciliation. Isn't that odd? You're angry with somebody, you're more likely eventually to be reconciled. contempt most often leads to permanent separation. So when you find people who can disagree well, you don't find contempt. When you find people who can't agree well, you find contempt and polarization. And sadly, that's where I think our country is now. 20 years ago, Republicans and Democrats could fight, but they'd tell stories how senators and congressmen were friends with each other and close friends, even though they are completely opposite on the aisle. The movie makes this great demonstration that a mother and daughter can fight and be angry, but the mother loves her daughter. In all honesty, it's the daughter who had contempt for the mother. She was cold to her mother. Her mother and her fought terribly, but her mother had no contempt for her daughter. And that gets into a second point. So I thought the mother was this great image of anger and fighting, but also that's love. The daughter, she didn't really know what love was. All she can hold is her mother in contempt. The part that I kind of get tired of is the movies about the cult of the teenager, but that's all right. The other thing I liked is the idea of gratitude, that in the movie, the nun says, love is a way of paying attention to the other. Isn't that a great, right? Love is a way of paying attention. Lady Bird, and that's the name of the daughter, and I'm sorry, I think it's hilariously funny, some of the insults the mother gives to the daughter. I know it's cruel and harsh, but I love great one-liners. And Lady Bird, that's the daughter, doesn't think her mother loves her, but her mother actually does pay excessive amount of attention. She doesn't agree with what her daughter is doing, but she is paying attention, and paying attention is a type of love. And the essence of the lack of gratitude is ignoring or using people. And Lady Bird, all Lady Bird's 3 boyfriends, they say they love her, but they really don't pay attention. She loves her best friend, but she stops paying attention to her best friend, and then her best friend forgives her, is angry, but her best friend forgives her, and they pay attention again. And so I just love the fact that the movie is set in the middle of California, and she hates it. She hates Sacramento, and she thinks her salvation is if she could move to New York City. But by the end of the movie, she discovers New York City is not her salvation. She never moves there. In the end of the movie, she loves paying attention to this backward town of Sacramento. She pays attention to Sacramento. She learns to pay attention. And she learns to love her mother. Her mother's not perfect and not well educated, but it was a great story about how a mother pays attention. It's a great story about the difference between fighting and contempt. So, it's not my favorite movie, but I think for a mother-daughter relationship, I thought it was very good that way. So that's my reaction. Your guys' reaction? Anybody see it? Yeah, Darcy. Here, talking stick.
Very loud voice. Thank you. Well,
Okay, that is too loud.
Just kidding. Might quiet me down. As a daughter and having a mother, I think the movie to me was more about breaking away and finding yourself. I don't think she ever lost love for her mother, but I think that you can interpret that anger as being something that she wanted to find her own way and not be smothered by the mother, and so I don't think she ever lost love.
Yeah, but I think it's an incomplete love. Like, she did have kind of this coldness to her mother.
Yeah,
But
I did too.
but I do agree, like my sister said this, and I found this true, is when my sister went away to college, she said to me, you don't know how good your parents are until you move away.
Yeah.
So, and that's what she found.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't totally buy into what you just said about the fact that she didn't love her mother.
Yeah, that's too strong, you're right. But her
Yeah.
love was not it was kind of cold. It was contemptuous.
Well, it may appear that way. I don't know, ladies, but.
So she was a teenager.
It may, yes, and I deal with teenagers too, so it may appear that way, but in my personal experience, you really do love your mother a lot. I think that's the conflict. And
I have to
you're
admit, I've
trying
never
to
been a
find
teenager.
yourself as a. I know you haven't. I don't think we're later.
No, that's a good point.
Don't get rid of the talking.
No, she makes a good point. I'm not a teenage daughter, but, right, maybe it was love. It just, oh, sorry, with her loud voice? Oh, she disagreed that she didn't love her mother.
Oh, what I said is that, I don't know if Mark, I don't do this, but.
Oh, it was just very.
Maybe some responsibility.
That's all right.
He throws me off my game,
You teach teenagers.
So I'm wondering how it might be if that movie had been about father-son. Do you think there would be a similar substance to it, same gender?
No, I don't
It
think.
had to be mother-daughter?
I don't think, fathers fight. I mean, God knows I fought with my father, but it wasn't like, there's not a lot of words. Mother-daughters use a lot of words when they fight. I mean, it's not like I didn't get mad at my mother, but I don't think I've ever said anything like, not even a small fraction to what my sisters were screaming and yelling about. God, I wish I could remember some of them. They were so funny. Like, do you remember when, because I do remember this, I just can't remember the lines. My sister was so mad at my mother once because my mother said something about my sister's clothing. Like, I just didn't get it. But when they were trying on clothes and the mother says something, I remember my sister just furious at my mother for something about her clothing. I was like, I don't get it. What's that?
That's because clothing to a teenage girl is part of who she is. And the mother sees what the percentage of the girl, but the girl sees her independence and says, I chose this. And so, yeah, I mean, I picked up when the teenagers were fighting in the first one, I was laughing hysterically.
Because you've been there? It is kind of funny because I think I think Lady Birds does use a line like something like, can't you say that you love me? Or,
Yeah, exactly.
I would never say that because you didn't like my shirt. Anyhow. Anybody else?
I just want, when you said it was about breaking away and what it was like to be in Sacramento, I think Jeannie and I are from that area. I moved there into the valley when I was a senior in high school. And so then there was an issue of what are we going to do and what is that place like compared to the rest of the world. So I think it just did a great job of evoking what that's like and celebrating Sacramento, which was really a neat place then.
I have to admit
Now
that, like,
it's a traffic jam.
oh, is it? I did really, that's the part of the movie I liked the best was at the very end where she loves Sacramento. Because I have to say, I love Idaho. And like I was talking to these guys from, this priest from New Jersey, very nice, but in the back of my mind I was like, oh, I could never live in New Jersey. Because he said he loves the city, and I was like, oh, I love Idaho. I just would not, I love everything about Idaho. So, but God bless them, they love New Jersey.
Even when there are windstorms like last night.
I loved it. Loved it. Loved the snow. Loved it all. I mean, I might be annoyed, but like I do love what the nun said about love is about paying attention. So, Rob, you look angry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, anybody else on Lady Bird?
I had the chance to watch it with my 13-year-old granddaughter. And And that was interesting to see her reaction to it. And then we could discuss some mother-daughter dynamics afterwards.
What was her reaction?
Yeah, what was her reaction?
She sided with everything Lady Bird was doing. Of course, she's 13.
Oh, no, I sided with the mother.
I mean, but then I was able to talk to her about, well, what about how the friend reacted, or what about this or that or the other thing, and so it did become a good teaching moment.
I think that what you're saying too, the movie seemed to be sort of authentic. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think that teenagers do go through some of that, and rejecting somebody who's less popular. They really like their friend, but the other one's more popular, and they sort of feel ashamed of themselves at the end. And yeah, all that seemed ring true to me.
Did you hear what she said? So there's a part where Lady Bird kind of rejects her friend because she wants to be with the popular people, and even though she really likes her friend, she goes with the really popular crowd that doesn't love her, but she has to be popular. So she's very concerned about image too. That's another theme in the movie.
Girls are different.
Girls are different.
What you just said is why I didn't like the movie. It seemed to me all the little contentious areas that a teenage has with their family were put in a list, and then you just made a movie around it. You know, that it was basically a battle movie that, to me, it just was hyped up.
It was a battle, but I have to say, I did like how it seemed so obvious how the mother does love her, even in this huge fight. So
Yeah, well, I think the mother should have been able to penetrate her psychic a little better. And
I don't know. I mean, I have to admit, my mother and my sister fought. My mother is so sweet, but my sisters and my mother fought so much. I don't know why. I don't know why. I am convinced of it, but the daughter-mother relationship is far more volatile. A lot more yelling.
well, you know, the contention of not being able to afford the fancy school that she wanted to go to, I think is a real sticking point for me, because we raised 8 children. And we were always like, no, you can't buy designer jeans, you can't buy the best sneakers, you can't buy the electronics. You know, you have brothers and sisters, you can play together, you can play board games. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always there. So I saw her as selfish.
Oh no, she was selfish.
Yeah. And the demands were, in this age, someone needs to help parents.
Well, that's true, except I would say this. This is what I also think. I think personally, this is my own belief, kids are more demanding in that area because they're more susceptible to advertising. Far more than...
So will ours.
And no, I think it's much worse today.
There is a lot of demand for high level. Well, especially in the University of Townsend.
And also, like, here's another thing. I know this sounds stupid, but every cell phone advertising is there. On Facebook, that's advertising. I got this, I'm wearing this. I don't think it affects boys as much as it affects girls. You didn't have the Kardashians when I was growing up. Which is all about how you look. I think now it's on steroids on how girls look and the clothing that they wear. They were
all wrapped up in that.
I think my sisters were, but I think today it's much worse. That's my feel. I don't.
So it's often said that girls don't really understand motherhood till they're a mother. And so it seems like in our society with more young people choosing not to have children or not having children until they have everything they can possibly desire. I think in society it takes away some of the nurture that comes with motherhood. So they just can't really quite get it. And they take it into adulthood and the sense of entitlement, you know, and acquisition of things instead of nurturing someone else.
Yeah, I don't know. This one girl from the parish had a baby, and it's amazing how motherhood has changed her. So, her sister, who I like, is a very good person, extremely concerned about clothing. And I'm just wondering, you know, when you have your first baby, I wonder if the same thing's going to happen where you don't care about the clothing anymore. So.
But you have to have the right jogging stroller and the most updated iPhone.
All right, enough with Lady Bird? Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to say.
Oh, she raised a daughter. Patty raised a daughter.
Yeah, and thankfully she's getting paid back for everything she has done. My granddaughter is wanting to go to Phoenix for her senior year, so there's a lot of heartbreak over that, but it's almost like going in. So I'm definitely going to get the two of them to go to see that movie. This is 3 generations of, you know, so I heard a lot of here and I'm sitting there nodding my head. It's good.
Well, I do think it's more of a mother-daughter movie. So I could be wrong. I just don't remember. I don't know any of my friends screaming at their mothers. Male friends. I don't know. Okay, so next movie, I just kind of liked it, but for odd reasons. It wasn't great. But there's a movie called The Apostle Paul. Anybody see that movie? Okay. So, I mean, I did love it simply because my favorite gospel is Luke. And in the movie is not historically accurate. But there's 4 lines. One, Paul is imprisoned in Rome. And Nero's accused him and other Christians in Rome. And Paul is being jailed. And Luke comes to write the gospel from Paul's account. So Luke visits the imprisoned Paul. Now, it's a theory in Scripture that Luke's gospel is heavily influenced by Paul. That's a pretty for sure theory, but the story that they actually met to transcribe it, that part is fiction. And the other part that's fiction is that the storyline concerns their relationship with this Roman guard. That part's fiction. Okay, the other third part is about Priscilla and Aquila, who were leaders of the church. That part clearly is fiction because they lived in Ephesus. They weren't ever in Rome. But here's the thing. So historically accurate, no. Did I love it? Yeah, I loved it. But I'm an easy sell there. I like it that it gave a little bit of flesh to these characters, even if it was fiction, and also it showed that Christianity involves persecution. And I like that theme because I think it's true. I really dislike the American gospel of prosperity, that if you accept Jesus, there's no suffering. And the movie is, no, if you really love, you suffer. So, I liked it. Anybody else see it? Did they like it or dislike it? Maureen, you liked it?
Yes.
Well, because I didn't hear Dawn's. I didn't even see Dawn's lips move. That's incredible.
I thought it was a good movie. I like the character Luke, played by Jim, what's his name? Yeah, he's right. He was a good Catholic anyway.
Yeah, I thought I liked it. It's easy. It was clever how they put a lot of scripture in the mouth of Paul. A lot of Luke's lines are put in there. So I liked it.
We had the gospel recently, I forget from who, or maybe it was the second reading, but it's Paul about having a thorn, the problem he had. In the movie, tell me if you agree with this, it implied that he had done something persecuting Christians that amounted to perhaps killing or maiming a child.
A girl, yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I wondered
totally.
about that.
Yeah, that's totally fiction. We don't
Yeah.
know what the thorn is. There's something Paul is incredibly ashamed about
Yeah.
in his writings. And somehow that shame Christ uses as a moment of grace. But we don't know what it is. It says maybe, because he did persecute the church, so he said he might have had a hand in the killing of this one little girl.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you. I was wondering whether I was tracking the movie properly, that they were suggesting that.
Yeah, it was implied.
Yeah.
So, anybody else see it that they liked or disliked it? You liked it?
I loved it. I thought it was really a great movie, especially when the forgiveness comes.
Oh, that's another point, yeah.
That forgiveness was like, wow, if Paul can get forgiveness for all the murders that he's committed in his life, what could or any of us on earth, possibly not be forgiven for? And that forgiveness needs to be something we accept.
Well, that is a good point too, forgiveness. Okay, another movie I saw was 3 Billboards. Anybody else see that movie?
Well, Billboard?
3 Billboards. Okay, so here's the odd part. My overall rating is, it was okay, wasn't a great fan, but the thing I did really like about it is that the characters contrasted themselves. There's a lot of black humor in the movie. The characters are written over large and blown out of proportion, in the sense that the main character is this woman, Mildred. She's lost this daughter who was murdered, but they haven't found the murderer, so she gets so upset. She rents 3 billboards to shame the police into trying to find her daughter's killer. And Mildred is tough as nails. I love her that they give her this old-fashioned name that sounds tough. Mildred is tough. And yet, Mildred can show tender mercy. So there's these contrasts. Mildred, as angry as she is, can also in an instant show incredible compassion. The very brave cop chooses a coward's way out. The sheriff, he commits suicide. He's supposed to be the brave one, and yet he chooses a coward's way out. There's another cop who's a bigot, who's a terrible person, who then changes to try and find the killer. There's this bimbo who slept with Mildred's husband, is this, 20 years younger, and she's kind of this bimbo, but out of her mouth comes these lines of wisdom. So the characters are exaggerated in their roles and then suddenly flip and do the very opposite of their defined roles. So this is a style of writing that I liked about Flannery O'Connor. So Darcy's a literature expert. But Southern writers, they do that. They write their characters in over-exaggerated terms. And so I couldn't help when watching the movie to think somebody had just read Flannery O'Connor, because she does this. She twists characters. That characters, they start out one way and then they show the opposite virtue. Such as, the mother's intense anger of wanting justice, and then suddenly changes to mercy. She chews out the sheriff, and then suddenly the sheriff coughs and spits up blood in her face because he has cancer. And she flips, and the intensity of the anger suddenly shows incredible motherly love for the cop who she just put the 3 billboards out against. The Catholic priest, I didn't like that scene. Mildred chews out this Catholic priest for talking about forgiveness, and then mentions a pedophilia scandal. And I have to admit, I heard hooting in the audience. So it made me think like, oh God, not again. But the bigoted sheriff, becomes the hero and willing to suffer to try and find the killer. That's another kind of over-exaggerated, sudden change. The part that I really didn't like is when the sheriff commits suicide, because he loves his family. He clearly loves his family. And I didn't see how that fit in the narrative of incredible love comes with this anger towards justice. The mother who's lost her daughter to an unknown killer has this intense anger towards justice, wanting justice. I kind of like that, but I didn't think it fit with the sheriff, who's supposed to be for justice and then chooses a coward's way out. And suicide is really hard on a family. Why would you do that to your children? That's a part that I just really disliked about the movie. I did like how the movie tries to cover the problem of evil. Evil is this problem and the ineffectualness of our fight against it. And yet, you have to fight against it. And the mother is upset that the police aren't doing anything. So in that sense, I liked the movie. That's what I liked about the movie, is kind of these Southern style writings that, the bigot is the one who suffers to try and find the girl. The angry mother also can show intense sweetness. So that's does that make sense, Darcy, what I said about Southern writers?
Yes, I'm not an expert on it, but one thing I didn't like the movie at all. It was way too vulgar and violent. And
The movie was
I
too
didn't
vulgar and
see a lot of
violent.
redeeming qualities. She did, getting back to that Lathrop thing though with this movie, Gilbert.
Okay, I'm going to give you the talking stick because I'm afraid.
Oh, well, okay, this will be brief. But she had a somewhat contentious relationship with her daughter too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that her daughter left the house. She said, just get lost if that's what you think, get out. And that's when the daughter got, I guess, kidnapped, raped, and killed. So do you think she was carrying some guilt too, that caused more rage for her? She was acting out her own personal rage and her guilt.
I never thought of that, yeah. I bet part of her rage is connected to her guilt. Although I will say this, I get tired of movies where that teenager is so angry with the parent. That's actually a theme I don't like, but anybody else want to say something about?
I was just relieved I didn't see a political agenda.
Yes.
I like her determination and grit. I mean, everything is going against her husband, and losing her daughter, and then the cops aren't following through. But she never gave up. The worthless cop finally turned around, which I thought was the right spot. And so anyway, if you don't like what's going on, you keep on going.
Even if you're solo. Well, I tell you what, that about the problem of evil, I will say I do agree with that, but that's just my personality. That I cannot understand some priests that aren't upset about certain evils in the world. I don't understand. They're kind of like, well, let's all just get along. Well, it's all for people getting along, but sometimes you have to harness the power of anger to kind of fight injustice. So, oh yeah.
One thing I didn't like is how she sucked her son into being involved in this. I mean, you know, life goes on.
Yeah, her anger was a huge agenda. But I never thought about that, the connection between guilt and anger too. So, yeah.
After living for 4 years in the Midwest, I thought it was kind of stereotyping Midwestern people. And I thought it was political in my mind of seeing the basket of deplorables life size on the.
I thought they lived in the South for some
No,
reason.
they live in Missouri. And, you know, well.
Sorry, in my mind, that's the South.
And it wasn't the South. So I see that Missourians are quite nice people. There's just, the Midwest is just full of nice, smart, capable people.
Okay, I
And
didn't get that,
don't
but
like it when you train us with food.
I didn't get that, but now that you said that, I do often kind of get upset with Hollywood's depiction of everything outside its borders as being ignorant. When I was living in LA and I'd say, I'm from Idaho, you'd kind of have this, oh, well, you know, this is the big city. And I said, you know, Idaho, we're better educated than Californians. No, like, and that would be my defense. Our schools are better than yours. And the world is so flat. You know, what do you think? Idaho people don't go to Paris? We just prefer a nicer background. You're the ones who live in over debt and smaller houses and they think.
Moving here too. I know, we're in California.
Well, anyhow, but I never thought, but that's one of the reasons I dislike Hollywood. And I was thankful this, like I know I love movies, but hate Hollywood. Have you noticed if there's a movie about Hollywood, it always wins Oscars because they are so self-absorbed. But that's just my little opinion.
How did you like the theme in the movie that the killers seem to be headed for Idaho?
I know that was a little bit shocking, but that was just meant way out of it. To be honest, I was disappointed with that because, you know, you do control all the elements, and part of me was like, well, is it better that they didn't catch the killer? Because then it just speaks about the power of this anger towards justice, or that they're going to go to Idaho and commit without evidence or any of that. That part I didn't like. That they think they have this guy and they're going to go kill him in Idaho. Well, I don't know if that's real justice. But
I thought it was to set up a sequel when they're actually going to do that.
oh, I didn't think of that.
I didn't like it, but yeah.
I have to admit, I didn't. Well, actually, I won't save that till later. Anybody else on? Okay, what about The Post? Anybody see The Post? Okay, I have to say I did like it. I liked it because it discussed the duty of truth. And I just think when journalism is done right, it's supposed to discern the truth, not support a position. So I did like that theme. But here's the strange part. At least emotionally, what struck me the most was actually the role of women. Like, I don't know why I'm so slow, but do you remember the dinner scene when? Do you know what The Post is about? What is her name? I forget her name. Catherine Graham. That she's at dinner with these. She has people over to her house for dinner, and then they're going to have dessert or coffee or something. She says, well, us women will go in the front room so you guys can talk politics. And it just seems so weird to me, but I guess that was the time period. And I love when the wife of Ben Bradley is kind of kvetching and complaining that he's the one who's trying to fight for justice.
Sally Quinn.
What's that?
Sally Quinn.
Was that her name? I don't know. So Sally Quinn says, no, don't you understand? What she's doing is brave. She was never brought up to stand up for men. And it just amazed me that, wow, this is in my lifetime, that the role of women has changed so much since the 1970s. That, I thought that was just, I love that part when the wife speaks to Ben Bradley, because I had never thought of that. So your guys' reaction to the movie? Really, none? No. Did anybody like it? Okay, Maureen, why did you like it?
I just liked it. I remember that whole era.
Oh.
You know, it was interesting. So Donald did not like it.
I know, I heard that. I liked it, but Okay. So I'll tell you what my favorite movie of this year was, and this is kind of surprising, because sometimes I go to movies and I walk out. If I'm too bored or don't like it, I walk out. So to be honest, I wanted to see this one movie because it had great reviews, but I was fully prepared to walk out halfway. I know it sounds strange, but I often start a book, and if I get bored, I just won't finish it. So I went to go see Will You Be My Neighbor? And of all things, it's about Mr. Rogers. And so I was like, I can't imagine myself liking this. I loved it. It was my favorite movie. Now I have to tell you, it is painfully slow. But it is painfully slow. There's not even a shoot-up scene. But I walked out thinking, wow, he was really a good man. Like and things I just never saw before, like even the slowness of the movie, it kind of makes this point that we're this frantic society and we're raising frantic children. And, you know, the stupid things of him putting on that sweater and putting on his shoes, you know, he did that because he believed children need consistency. And what people aren't giving children is a defined consistency. And I think he's right. Like, and he was actually a saint. When the civil rights movement's going on, he's putting his feet in a pool of water with a black mailman. And he did cover a lot of social issues, but in a way a child could understand it. And he was a great child advocate. So, like, I never really watched this program too much as a little kid, but I walked out of the movie thinking that man was a saint. So that was my favorite movie. And I think, we have too much of children's TV is mocking or violent, and I just walked out thinking that guy is a saint. It was my favorite movie of the year. Anybody else see it? Sorry.
I didn't see the movie, but I remember my children watching Mr. Rogers. And to me, if we could have him back, the calming effect, you say it was slow, but that was, I think, the thing about his program that was so mesmerizing for kids, because it was such a slow, calm.
He wants children safe, but he does, in his own gentle way, tackle issues. No, really, I'm the only one. Who else saw it? Oh. I'll tell you, so your reaction to you liked it? Or too slow?
What I liked is it allowed him, part of the slowness was he was reflecting on why he created the show. Why, I mean, he was very instrumental in how it came to be. So here's a man stepping into the situation, the climate, and making a difference. But he had a chance to tell us what it was.
And he just didn't want to entertain children, he wanted to make children's lives better.
Right.
And everything he said about what's wrong with society, he wasn't bitter, but he tried to be an antidote. And I just think that was kind of sweet. So
I just have a personal story. We lived in Pittsburgh in the 70s, and we got to ride that trolley downtown, which was scary. But he always, every year at Christmas, he would be in the window, instead of Santa Claus, he would be in the window of the Kaufman's department store. And Nels my oldest son, had horrible asthma, and if he'd go out the outside playing, he couldn't breathe, and he'd come in, and he'd watch Mr. Rogers, and it was just an antidote to his franticness of not being able to breathe. And so it was perfect for him at the time. Now he makes it worse, but then it was perfect. He was just the kindest man.
yeah, that comes to an oddball. I mean, let's face it, but I don't care. He's an oddball who was a saint.
But he was such an intellectual, and he was so smart that he could read people like nothing he could read. So Giles is there, and I'm taking him down to Kaufman's to see that the girls were just babies. So he went, and he said, if that man makes me in his life, I'm leaving. And I said, no, he doesn't do it. So he said, he didn't. He said, he sits down next to the kids, and he talks to them. And then he puts his hand kind of like this. And sometimes little kids would put their hand in his, but he never forced them. He never in anything that was not in the child's best interest. It was, I thought it was.
No, let's go.
Another subtle thing, in the beginning, he goes from being this man in a jacket, you know, in times when women are the influence and tenderness in for children. He has a jacket on, and his transformation is when he puts the sweater and the tennis shoes on. Then he's coming down so he can sit beside him.
He even comes down the steps.
He comes down the steps and he sits there and he you know, he ties his shoes. So he's doing things that children need to do, you know.
But also, like, I love the fact that he does that so that children have routine and consistency. And Steve, did you?
Yeah, in the Sunday paper, the Idaho States had a complete article about the movies.
Oh.
And one part that got me, I read it this morning. He had a 14-year-old special needs kid come on the movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's in the movie.
And he asked the kid to pray for him. And he felt that this kid is closer to God than he is because of his special needs. And I think, you know, this is another reflection on that.
I think he's amazing. Like, handicapped kids, special needs kids. I think the whole thing. I think the man was. Now I think the man's amazing. Before I thought he was a joke. Tom.
I did not see the movies.
Get out!
But I did just, and probably is somewhat of a promotion for it. There is a clip, a YouTube clip of Mr. Rogers speaking to Congress in.
Oh yeah, that's in the movie.
Search out on YouTube for it. I highly recommend it because, in contrast to him talking down to the kids and how great he was at doing it, seeing him speaking to a congressional panel about funding for public television is really what launched public television for children, like Sesame Street and the Electric Company, and all those children's programs manifested from that discussion we had in Congress. And I think that's, so he crossed both, crossed both planes. He got down to the kids level, and he was able to secure millions. I think it was in the, his budget for the show was nothing, right? It was like zero, and then he's talking to Congress, and it went to like millions for funding public television. So that blew me away. I had no idea. I just knew the goofy guy with the sweater and the slipper.
Out of that too came that there was out of that law came a panel that parents could participate in Children's Television Network. And I would get every month, I would get a survey saying, what is good, what wasn't good, what would you like to do better. So it really included all parents too. It wasn't just writing and didn't produce the show. It was involved, and I thought that was wonderful. So I wrote a letter. Moreover, on Sesame Street would cut off his crust on his bread. I said, no, that's where the nutrition is. Grover put cutting his crust on his bread.
Oh, you're the one who stopped that.
And my kids want to cut the crust off his bread.
So, kind of as a contrast of Will You Be My Neighbor is, and I do love them, so I'm not putting down, but there's all these superhero movies out, right? Mm-hmm. And this year was, Ragnarok and Infinity War. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion, but I love those movies. Love those movies. But really, after Mr. Rogers, when I was driving home, I was thinking, I don't know if those are really, now, I will still go see them, but I don't think they're really good for children. And when I was driving home thinking, all those superhero movies is you just have this onslaught of incredible anger, whoever your enemy is against. And if you really look at those children's movies, they're incredibly violent. And I was driving thinking, I don't, granted I'll go see them because I love that stuff, but I think they're really unhealthy for children, that how you deal with the world is by doubling down on anger.
Spider-Man.
Well, anyhow, that sounds good. So anyhow, I'll give you my opinion of superhero movies. Did anybody see Ragnarok besides me? Okay, that's funny you say. It's kind of interesting. He loses an eye, and just to explain that, because I know Norse mythology, because I I'm a total nerd, and even in high school I knew Norse mythology. The idea is that to really gain sight in the world, to understand the world, you have to lose sight. Which sounds kind of stupid, but I think it's actually kind of true. Odin, when he gains wisdom, is because he's willing to sacrifice. When you lose something, that's when you gain wisdom. So Thor, he loses an eye in the movie, but that's when he really comes to see reality. And in Norse mythology, is that you need both eyes for what do you call that? Perceptual depth. But when you really see the world is when you lose your your eyesight. I kind of like that. And Ragnarok is apocalyptic. Ragnarok is this Norse mythology that the world is going to end. And even in high school, I was like, why would you have a myth like that? Now I kind of get it. That you have to be willing to say goodbye to the world. I know that sounds odd, but Ragnarok is about the destruction of the world. And Thor thinks his job is to prevent it. And then he sees, no, my job is to fulfill it. Sometimes you have to let the world die. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. So I think some people, the problem is they want to always the world to say exactly as it is. And so I have kind of a friend who's divorced, but he's dating somebody who's almost 25 years younger than him. It's actually kind of embarrassing because he has 2 daughters, and she's the same age as his daughters. And I know I'm being judgmental, but it's just kind of embarrassing to see the 2 of them together. And then, so he's dating her, but somehow on Facebook it came out that she's also kind of dating somebody else who's her own age, but quote, dating this older man because he has money. And he's kind of knows it, but is in denial of it. And all I can think is, you have to let certain things die. You're no longer 30 years old. Does that make any sense? You're trying to pretend like you're still in your 30s. There's sometimes a healthy thing is that you're not meant to have the same world forever and ever. You have to say goodbye to things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Said goodbye many times. But so that's actually the Norse mythology behind it, which I like. But the movie did kind of make that point. But it was more about if you have a problem, you come at it with overwhelming anger and force. I just don't think that's what we should be teaching our kids. The Infinity War, half the universe dies. It's once again about gaining the most amount of power. And I think for kids watching it, I think that's subtly what it's preaching. Movies are pulpits. And they're just teaching them you gain more and more power over your enemy. It was very clever with Thanos. He's the enemy in it who literally in the movie, there's going to be a part 2. He kills off half the people in the universe with a snap of his fingers. And then just wants to watch the sunset. And I was like, what? Sociopaths are never satisfied with just watching the sunset on the beach. Once you have that lust for power, you can never have enough of it. So, to be honest, I was kind of irritated with it. And especially after this Mr. Rogers, I think it's very unhealthy that we're teaching our, I know I'm a hypocrite because I'll still go see those movies. But I think it's wrong that we're teaching our children that the most amount of the ones who's most angry, most violent, most aggressive, always wins. Contrast that against Mr. Rogers.
What about the teamwork element?
Well, that's true. They do have teamwork, but it does have teamwork. You're right, but still, for you to be somebody, I know I feel like I've become Mr. Rogers, the nerd, because anybody who's special has special gifts, right? You have special powers that nobody else has. But in a way, I think that's kind of shaming. Now, I know that sounds strange, but hear my psychology. So, I told you about this before. A couple of years ago, this was on the news where somebody lost a teenage son. And the local news interviews the father, and the interviewer says, why did you love your son? And he says, because he was great at sports. You don't love your son because he's great at sports, if you can't figure that out. You love your son because you love your son. And I remember thinking, what kind of shame did that kid grow up with? That you're there to make your parents proud of your sports abilities. What would you say if I said, why do you love your daughter? And you said, because she's cute. Well, then you really don't love your daughter. Does that make any sense? And so for you to be special in these movies, to be part of the team, you have to have a superpower that nobody else has. I know I'm hypocritical because I'll still go, but that's different than Mr. Rogers. He wants every kid to feel special. That's not entitled, that's special. Okay, does that make any sense? Like, I don't think that's a healthy thing to be teaching our kids. I think it's subtle, but I could be wrong. I just think, because you realize, in some sense, even as a kid, you realize, I have no superpowers. I don't look like Superman.
I just think you're on the road to outgrowing superheroes.
I'm on the road? I don't know. I'm 55. I think
you might start getting bored.
Maybe, but I'm still going through the movies. But I know I'm a hypocrite because part of me is like, I don't like that message. But here's the odd part. They did do a psychological study. So here's the healthy part of it. They did this psychological study on what good do superheroes do our kids. There is a good. Here's the odd part. In these superhero movies, when you have a superhero stand up to evil, and little kids play like Superman or Spider-Man, what they're learning is bravery. And they found out kids that role play a superhero are more likely to stand up to a bully. So that's the good news. Part of it is the other part I don't.
So Father, maybe the reason you're supposed to continue to attend is so you can communicate that to children, what's coming out of those movies. Otherwise, they'll see what they see. I mean, the very fact what you just said to us, that's probably what the kids need.
Yeah, but there's no children
They're
in.
going to attend anyway. No, not here, but when
Except for Dawn, there's no children here.
But you know, like in homilies, when you bring things up, kids really are listening to you, believe it or not, in your homilies. So when you, from time to time, talk this way in your homilies, it's really great. And you can say it because you've been there and you've experienced it, so you can speak up. Yeah.
I've never been a superhero. Oh, okay, so that kind of ends it. I have a meeting in a couple minutes. Anybody have any movies that I didn't mention that they really loved?
The Book of Eli. Now that's an older one.
The what?
The Book of Eli.
I never saw it though.
Oh, you need to see Washington.
You loved it?
I did like it, but I mean, it had to grow on me. I didn't think about it later on. I mean, I still think about it.
Wow.
Things that we don't.
Book of Eli. Anybody else?